found a little squirrel picnic table. You can see here's the cone where it's chewed all around the outside, and you can see here you've got the kind of scales of the pine cone, but also look, these are the actual seeds themselves, and that's in there. So these are the winged seeds, and you can see where the squirrel has eaten the little seed just out of the centre of that. It's absolutely perfect little display of squirrel behaviour. Perfect display of Labrador behaviour, him eating things he shouldn't. Oh, Ned. I'm here to have my early morning cup of tea, and I just want to talk a little bit about the birds that I've just took some footage of previously, and they're redwings. These birds are winter visitors, and they arrive in quite large numbers, and we're lucky enough to get quite a few here where I live in Sussex. And they're a type of thrush. They're about the same size as song thrush. They fly in quite a distinctive manner. You get them in quite large aggregations, as I said, and they fly in a particular way. They're sort of, they're about the same size as song thrush or starling, and actually you can think that they're starlings, but starlings, you may have seen those amazing murmurations, which is where they've got all this sort of swarming mass of birds. Redwings, although they're about the same size and they fly in a sort of similar way, or they look quite similar when they're flying, they don't have that kind of coordinated, whenever you see starlings flying, they're always in a kind of a squadron. They're always in little clumps of 5 or 10 or 50 or thousands, like you get in the murmurations. But redwings, as you saw in the video, they just tend to be much more ping, 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 ping. They don't fly in any sort of coordinated manner. Also, when they fly, they have their wings further back, whereas starlings are much more out to the sides. So it's one of those things that often with birding, bird watching, there's quite a lot of different information that you gather, and you sort of tick, tick, cross, cross, tick, cross, tick, and you come out with the type of bird it is. So you're looking at the time of year that you're seeing it, whereabouts you're seeing it, the noise it makes. So I don't want to say song, because often the only sound you hear from a bird is kind of an alarm call or a sort of communication call with their chums. So with like I said, with birding, it's a question of sort of using all the clues you have at your disposal, because often going on things like plumage or a particular diagnostic, like an eye stripe or something. Redwings have a really pale eye stripe, but obviously when they're flying away from you with the light, in such a way that they just look black, there's not really a lot of point in trying to search for an eye stripe. So yeah, it's important to build up a bank of knowledge, not just about what the bird looks like, but also its jizz, as we call it, which is a sort of general inference size and specifics. So that's what we tend to go for. But I did just want to show you this. I've got some beautiful bird books. This is one of my more sort of well-thumbed field guide versions. And as you can see, this, see if I can get it to focus, you can see here, you've got, these are redwings flying and these are starlings flying, and so it's quite just although it might look very similar, there are just subtle differences, and you combine that with, like I said, the noise they make. Starlings don't tend to make much noise when they fly, whereas redwings, you know, have that sort of chaka chaka, slight alarm call, and like I said, they don't fly in quite the same sort of coordinated fashion as a starling. I also want to show you this. I got this beautiful book from eBay the other day, and it's just, I love these older books. I think it was printed in the 60s. I did look this up. Yeah, they're reprinted. I mean, the text is 1964 and the colour plates are 1964 as well, and it's reprinted in the 80s. But I absolutely adore these kind of contextual plates, which actually shows the birds in situ. And here you've got the redwing there, which, as you can see, does have quite a rusty kind of underwing patch and a very pale belly. And then you've got these birds here, the fieldfare, which is just my absolute favourite winter bird. And down here you've got the sort of more common thrushes that we get in the summer and the winter, but these are just the winter visitors. So I just want to show you this book. I absolutely love it. It's got some beautiful illustrations in it, beautiful paintings. As some of you may know, I'm also an artist. That one there, I paint birds, and so for me, I love these illustrations. Like I said, the photographic books are great, but I think sometimes illustrations give a better idea of what you're actually looking for. So that was just a little thing that I wanted to show you about the redwings. So keep an eye out for those if you're around and about in the UK. There's lots of them around at the moment, and they quite often go, you know, they do very much visit gardens. They don't tend to go on sort of bird tables and stuff, but if you've got any buried shrubs or trees in your garden, or you've got any windfall apples, they might well be visiting your garden. So that's something to look out for when you're watching out of your window. Making a gingerbread house, and I've got my cutters here. I'm starting off by just weighing out the ingredients to melt, and so I need 375 grams of unsalted butter, and then I need 150 grams of golden syrup. Now I'm going to use a little bit of dark black treacle in mine as well, just because I've only got white sugar, so I need to just like colour it up a little bit by, otherwise it's all going to look a bit insipid. Normally you use muscovado sugar, but obviously it kind of comes to the same difference if you add in molasses to the mixture. Oh, sorry. Some time. So I need 150 grams of liquid syrup, basically. So I will pop that, how much is that, 25 grams. So I'm just substituting about 25 grams of the golden syrup with black treacle. And then I need 300 grams of sugar. Obviously normally, like I said, you'd use muscovado. Pop that on to melt. Meanwhile, back at the dry ingredients, I need 900 grams of flour. There we go. And in true style, I don't have any bicarb, so I'm going to use baking powder. You don't need a huge amount. I think it's 1 teaspoon, so I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Then quite a lot of ground ginger. I need 2 tablespoons, which is probably that. Okay. I'm just going to sift this into the bowl. So this is all melted now, and so I'm going to pour it into the dry ingredients. You make a well in the centre of the dry ingredients and then pour the syrupy buttery mixture, oh, it smells so good, syrupy butter mixture into the middle, and then mix it all round, and then I'll go and roll it out and cut out the pieces. So I'm now going to roll out the pieces, and it's just a question of remembering how many bits of each. So I need 2 each of these. That's the roof, that's the sides, and this is the table end. So I'm just going to, my mixture's a little bit crumbly because I don't think I had quite enough syrup. I always struggle measuring out syrup because it never goes quite right. So I'll see how I get on, but I always roll mine out between sheets of greaseproof paper, and because I find it easier, it doesn't stick so much. So I just kind of pop a dollop onto here. You see it's a bit crumbly. It shouldn't actually matter, it will sort of blend together once you start rolling it out. I don't make it too thin, it probably needs to be, you know, getting on for a centimetre thick. Just so it has the sort of structure and integrity to you know, be a proper house. Right, so these two are ready to go into the oven now, and they need to bake for about 8 to 10 minutes, but do keep an eye on them. They easily burn. Now you can do the thing where you cut out little shapes and then crush up boiled sweets, and so you make kind of stained glass windows. Mine always stick horrendously, and also I don't actually like boiled sweets very much, so I don't do that, but it is a nice effect if you like that kind of thing. I always do loads and loads of trees because I quite like my gingerbread house to be in a sort of forest. I don't do any people. Very appropriate for this year, I think. Here are the finished gingerbreads. Remember, they keep sort of baking, or they keep sort of hardening up as they cool, so I left this one in the oven a little bit too long. Some of them are a bit toasted, but that's fine. What I'll do is, when they're cool, I will trim them up so they're nice and got nice straight edges. You can see these are sort of bowed out slightly, and that's just going to make construction difficult, and frankly construction's difficult enough already. I have a Labrador, so I'll be pushing these into the middle of the table so he can't eat them, and I'll be back to show you how I put it all together. So, here I am with my currently naked gingerbread house. Was it easier? I was just talking to Amber, my daughter, about this because she did the caramel instead of royal icing this year as well, having shown me it on TikTok, and it is slightly easier in so much I don't now, want to go and commit suicide. But it's not easier as in not so like, oh, that was easy. I think the lady on the TikTok clearly either bought a kit so the sides are all square. I can never get my pieces to be uniform, and you're meant to trim them up. But the trouble is you then just, unless you're really precise about it, which is not really me. Anyway, I mean, it is all stuck together. I only burnt myself once. And I think it certainly seems to be quite firm. And that's something which I do really dislike about the royal icing, is that you're really meant to decorate it, as in, or you're meant to stick it together, leave it for like 24 hours to the royal icing to harden properly. Which I never do, which is why it all keeps falling apart and I end up swearing. So at least I like the sort of instantaneousness of this. But on the other hand, once you've dunked it in the sugar caramel, you then have to get it on, plonk it on. And obviously I had to do a bit of sort of remedial work up one side. I mean, would you buy a house off me? Anyway, I'm going to decorate it a little bit later with Rosie, my younger daughter. And I'll have to work out what sort of aesthetic I'm going for this year. But yeah, I mean, how do you stick your gingerbread house together? I think I'm not a great fan of royal icing, as in the texture and taste of it anyway. So I'm just deciding I think I might use glacé icing, really thick glacé icing, to actually decorate it with, and I'll probably use chocolate buttons as well, because I'm not a great fan of the contrast in texture. Honestly, why do I do this? Why do I do this? Once I've done it, I'll obviously put some photos out there, and then I'll have to smash it and send most of it to my son, because he will be deeply disappointed if he doesn't get some gingerbread, and I'm not seeing him for another week or so anyway, I think. Anyway, so there we are. That is my stage 1 of my gingerbread house. I've got a small forest of gingerbread trees, and so later on I'll get on and decorate the gingerbread house. Bird feeders out of some pine cones and some mealworms and sunflower hearts and some lard and some string. I want to make these. I've got to move my bird feeders, or I've had to move my bird feeders away from the garden just because of bird flu, and because I've got chickens. The chickens are now all shut in, but I'm still trying to kind of discourage birds from actually coming into the garden, but that makes me really sad. So instead what I'm doing is I'm going to make some feeders and hang them in the tree, which is outside my garden, so I'll still be able to see them from the kitchen window, which is where I do most of my bird watching, but they won't actually be in the garden itself. So it's postman. So so I'm going to just stuff these pine cones with a lardy mixture of sunflower seeds and mealworms, and then use the strings to just tie them up so I can hang them up in the tree. And I've got some these are the Monterey pine cones, which my parents got for me, because they are, the Monterey pines grow where they live on the Isle of Wight. So I've got some really lovely big pine cones, but I've also got some little regular Scots pine cones. Now, if you watched my vlog back in the autumn, when I was collecting pine cones and saying, collect them in kind of September, October time, because you get to this time of year and you want to use them, and the ones out in the fields are all soggy. So this is why you collect them and leave them to dry, because they will also open up more if you leave them somewhere warm. So put them on a radiator or something and they'll open up. So I'm going to do some little baby ones as well, and I'm just going to hang them around. I mean, obviously they're all biodegradable. This is recycled cotton string from my veg box, which ties my veg box up, so I'm going to use that, but you can just use ordinary garden twine, but then they're sort of biodegradable and you can just hang them up in the trees and leave them for the birds to get on with. Obviously using sunflower hearts and mealworms are, they're really high in energy. Hello Neddy. Hello. And so that will give them a bit of an extra boost, but not, I'm handling them less, the feeders less, and they're obviously not coming into the garden and potentially sort of infecting the chickens if there is any bird flu around. So it's a bit of a sad time if you're like me and you love your chickens but you also love your wild birds. I feel a bit compromised, but anyway, this is a way of me still feeling I'm providing for my birds, still able to watch them, but not actually encourage them into the garden. Obviously, if you don't have chickens, you can carry on encouraging the birds into your garden. You know, so it's only if we're poultry keepers as well that it's a bit more difficult. So, Neddy, get out the bin. Thank you. So, I'm going to get on. I'm just melting the lard, which stinks, and I will be mixing it with the mealworms, which also stink. So I'm going to be lighting my Yankee candle after this and enjoying a bit of festive fragrances rather than stink horrible lard and mealworms. But anyway, so I'm going to get on and tie this string, put the melted lard into my bowl, mix it with the ingredients, and then sort of just pack them into the pine cones. And so I'm going to get on and do that. So I've attached the cones to the string. I've even done a few sort of double-decker ones. These pine cone feeders will attract kind of tits, robins, maybe some of the bigger finches. Robins used to only be able to feed from kind of flat feeders like bird tables or ground feeders, but they've learnt to hover and perch on sort of suspended feeders as well. So boomer robins have to feed from ground feeders, but the more Generation Z robins are able to perch, which is quite an interesting sort of evolution. A bit like, you know, birds are obviously very intelligent, and a bit like blue tits learning to feed off milk bottles. Robins have learnt to exploit feeders by being able to hover and perch on smaller sort of little perches. So that's quite an interesting thing. But the advantage of using these is that you won't get things like pigeons and crows being able to use them. So it will prioritise the smaller passerines, the songbirds. And also, like I said, they're biodegradable. They'll just, you don't have to sort of handle them. Bird flu is contagious to humans. In fact, it was thought that it would be the next pandemic that we'd have to deal with. So do be mindful of that. And if you see a dead bird, it's quite important to, you have to report dead birds. I mean, it tends to be more in, I think they've found it more in sort of geese and swans. But if you find a dead bird, it's probably a good idea to not touch it, or certainly not touch it with your bare hands, but report it to to DEFRA. So I'm just going to, so like I said, being able to use these, which are sort of single use but still biodegradable, and it's probably quite a good idea at the moment. So that's sunflower seeds and mealworms. I'm just going to get some porridge oats to put in as well. Lots of bird seeds just have a lot of wheat in them, and wheat isn't really good for any of the songbirds. Sparrows will eat wheat, but it's not particularly good substance to be putting in. So stick to kind of sunflower hearts and mealworms, and like I said, porridge oats is fine. Make sure you're getting proper bird seed grade products. I'm going to make quite a sort of a thick, put lots of the mealworms and sunflower seeds, because I want it to be, I don't want the lard is really just used as a high energy fixative. I don't want too much sort of hanging around, so I'll add a bit more mealworms. Mealworms are really good for adult birds this time of year. You could, if you wanted to, if you've got chickens, you could make this for your chickens too, but the trouble with them being confined is they're going to get a bit fat anyway, just because they're not exercising. And mealworms and sunflower hearts are quite you know, obviously they're very nutritious and they can make your chickens a little bit on the porkly side, so got to be a bit careful with feeding them treats. Oh, Ned is extremely interested in this delicious food I'm making for him. So I'm just going to pack this into the pine cones, just sort of obviously where it's open. I'm just kind of stuffing it down. Oh, it really does smell compared to the gingerbread. It's not a very nice smell. So I'm just going to sort of pop them in, and then I'll leave them to harden up and cool off on some greaseproof paper. So I'm just kind of tapping them to get them to go down into all the little crevices. Obviously the birds will be able to sort of wheedle them out of the sort of the scales between the in the pine cones, so jiggle it around and make sure you get the seeds and mealworms down into all the little nooks and crannies. Shake off the excess. These are dry. If the lard starts to kind of set while you're still filling them, you can just sit it back either over a pot of saucepan of warm water if you've got a metal pot, or just sit it on a radiator or something. So here are my chucks. We've built this frame into my carport, and I've got a shower curtain up just to stop the foxes taking a look. So I've got an old rabbit hutch there for them, that's mainly for the ducks to go in and sleep in at night. They've got an old half a pumpkin there to chew at. They've got the feeders and drinkers. They've got pallets and a sort of hanging perch. They can perch up on this bit of wood as well. And they've got bits here for them to, it's not so much for them to poke around in, but that all these piles of wood and crocks here will produce, will encourage kind of spiders and woodlice and earwigs and things, and they can have a ferret around in there if they want to. Like I said, there's pallets at the back there for them to climb onto. It's obviously kind of not that big an area, but it's fairly, I'm keeping it fairly dark just because if it's keeping the light a bit subdued helps keep them calm. And as you can see, they're actually kind of quite happy. They're just pretty chilled this time of year anyway. They sort of rest quite a bit. Quite a few of them are molting. You can see lots of happy preening going on. And yeah, so it's just a question of trying to keep them kind of entertained and safe and healthy. As you can see, it's all enclosed and it's not too cold. Now I've got this
sheet up. It should keep the weather out, and like I said, just shade it off a bit. But you can see they're all preening, they're all eating really well, and none of this lot are laying anyway, but there is a nest box there just in case somebody decides they want to lay an egg. But yeah, they're kind of in their little groups. Those 3 white hens are normally together, and these 3, so the Buff Sussex, the Rhodie, and the Barnveld, the little Bantam cockerel there, then another group, then that 4 are normally together too. So they do stay in their sort of friendship groups, but they seem to be getting on okay. And the duckles are pretty quiet at this time of year as well. They've got some greens there. And what I'll do is I'll come and fork over. Obviously this is a concrete floor, but I'll come and fork over the this earth here, because there'll be loads of worms in there. It's got a bit wet because this does leak a little bit, but at least it's better than being out in the open. So yeah, that's where they're going to be for the next few months. Well done, chooks. That concludes the vlog for this time and this year. Thanks all so much for watching during lockdown and while we've all been navigating this year. I really appreciate your support and your comments. It's really lovely to hear from people. And I will be uploading again in the new year. I'm going to have a couple of weeks off over Christmas, and then I'll be back in January for some hopefully springish kind of vlogs. And I will record some stuff over the next few weeks just to put into that. So stay tuned for that one. I'll let you know when I upload, and I might have to cut down slightly from a weekly to a fortnightly vlog, just depending on what else I've got going on with the bees and various other things. But I will be back, and hopefully you'll be able to join me for some fun and games next year. So you can't really see Ned, he just looks like a black nose. The sun is really low, obviously, and shining in, so he's sort of vanished. But anyway, he is here, and as I said, I look forward to seeing you next time.